Hi team, we've arrived at one of the moments that makes ancient Greece one of the most important civilizations in history, the birth of democracy. How can we even begin to capture the importance of such an event? When people proudly talk about how we live today, there are many things we can point to and be happy about. But among the proudest of our traditions is that people have the right to vote to choose their leaders. As a historian, when I think of this fact, I can't help but think that whenever people wear an I voted button, they should also wear a thank you Cleisthenes button. Cleisthenes is not exactly a household name, but he should be. And at Knowable World, we intend to make it so. Solon, as we now know from the last lesson, played a major role in the rise of democracy by making debt slavery illegal in Athens. That meant that Athenian citizens could no longer enslave each other. The problem was that when food ran out, which it did, again and again, it was harder for the commoners to survive. If they might have been able to make a deal to survive with the aristocracy before, now that deal might not be available. The aristocrats might just turn them down. This is one of those situations that is hard to understand without the help of history. The aristocrats were not rich by our standards. They were just richer than others. They didn't have billions of dollars. They didn't have cars and computers and air conditioning or even running water. The problem the Athenians had now was how to try to make sure they could get through rough times together. Before the rise of democracy, when things became desperate, people would simply fight one another. There was no other way. They had done this so many times, there was no progress, just like in ancient Egypt for thousands of years. Sometimes the commoners would win the war against the aristocracy and choose a temporary ruler of their own called a tyrannos. This person would usually force the aristocrats to give up their food and land. But that didn't solve anything. It just made everyone equally poor and miserable, and it caused more fighting. Enter Cleisthenes. Cleisthenes realized that the people needed to find solutions together instead of fighting. He gave equal political rights to citizens, including especially the right to vote. This meant that when difficult decisions were made, it wasn't just one group telling another what to do. It was all the citizens working together and voting. Is this a perfect idea? We all know that people disagree all the time, and just because they vote, it doesn't remove those disagreements. But who could argue that it isn't better than fighting? When people in a democracy vote, what happens is that they first get together and talk about the problem they are trying to solve. They all come up with solutions. They talk about different ways of doing something. They argue, they debate, and then they decide. How does it work? Well, it's pretty straightforward. When a group of people needs to decide something democratically, each person gets one vote. The votes are counted. And then some simple arithmetic decides the outcome. If 6 people were voting on something like what kind of pizza to get at a party, and 3 people decided on cheese pizza, and 3 people wanted pepperoni, then it would be a tie. There would be no winner. But if 4 people voted for cheese and only 2 for pepperoni, then the group of 4 would win the vote. The winning side is called the majority. It's easy to figure out what the majority in any group is. You just figure out what is half of the group and you add 1. So in a group of 10, half is 5, and then you add 1, that's 6. In a group of 100, half makes 50, and you add 1, 51. It's really that simple, even with large groups. If 1,000,000 people vote, then half is 500,000. And you add 1 to get 500,001 as a majority. Does this mean that the majority is right, just because they have 1 more than half the votes? Is that how we figure out what is right? Clearly not. Literally every great invention and achievement in history was made by a single person that did not accept what everybody else accepts and decided to do something different. What is true or good is not based on how big a group supports it. So democracy is not some kind of perfect answer that solves all our problems. The crucial problem that you might already know is that the smaller group which is called the minority, can have its life made miserable or worse by the majority. Democracy literally means the rule of the majority. As we now know today, and the Athenians also knew, it's very important to protect the rights of the minority when a majority rules. Otherwise, the majority can do truly terrible things. But how do you do that? We'll talk about that in Lesson 8, and even more about it in our Anchor Facts series on ancient Rome. As the founding fathers of America knew, people have rights that should never be taken away, even by the majority, such as the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is one of the greatest lessons in all of history, and I hope you've had a chance to watch our Anchor Facts series of mini lessons and printables on American history, which is completely free on the Knowable World website and YouTube. In the meantime, get ready for the next lesson. It's going to be about the most important war in all of human history. See you soon.